Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I wanted to talk about some slight differences and things to look out for when you're buying CGC 9.8 comic books. Because I think, one of the easier mistakes to kind of make when you're buying the 9.8s is to kind of think that it's like a perfect comic book no matter what. When really, in my experience, I'm going to say maybe 30 to 40% of 9.8s are look pretty much perfect. Maybe that percentage is a little higher with modern books, but in the 80s, yeah, I would say probably over half of 9.8s have their kind of quirks and differences, and the colors are dimmer and things like that. So many differences to think about when you're buying CGC 9.8s, and I think one of the worst things you could do is think that the comic book is a perfect 9.8 and just kind of insta-buy without doing any kind of due diligence. So for the video today, I got a 7-point checklist that I think is really helpful, and I'll recommend it, before you buy CGC 9.8 comic books, to be aware of all the slight differences and the things, you need to look out for. I think you follow this 7-point checklist and you'll be well on your way. So what I want to do is use my Incredible Hulk 340s as kind of an example throughout the checklist that I can reference, because, this is the only 9.8 I got 4 of. And they're all kind of different in their own way. Yeah, it's kind of a pretty good, a group of 4 with all the kind of differences in each of them in a way too. So we'll get into them in the list. But Hulk 340, it's one I've recommended for a late 80s book. 710 9.8s, 13.8% CGC 9.8 ratio. That's really nice and low for a late 80s book. So, Incredible Hulk 340, yeah, and they're going for about 500 right now. I think is a pretty decent deal on an Incredible Hulk 340 in the CGC 9.8. So let's get into that 7-point checklist. You see a 9.8, you might get a little excited, so what do? Here, you want to get into these 7 points to sort of make sure you wrap your head around all the differences of the CGC 9.8 to make sure you know what you're going to buy, basically. So the first checklist here is never kind of insta-buy, or never fall in love, or, never think it's perfect. So we kind of alluded to that. So that's the first one. You never want to fall in love and just insta-buy it without doing the due diligence. So that's number 1. Number 2, you want to check the feedback of the seller and the shipping. For me, the shipping's pretty important because I'm from Canada, and sometimes, before I get excited, I look at the shipping first, because then I know I can get it or not, because a lot of times from the shipping around the world to Canada where I am is, $50, $60, $70 with all these tariffs that they usually add at the checkout kind of thing. So yeah, I got to find the right shipping for me. But check the feedback of the seller, because you know what? In my experience with feedback, if the seller has a lot of orders and a lot of time on eBay and their feedback is 96 or 97% or something, I would not purchase from them, because usually that means they have shoddy packaging, something's going wrong in their business, even though they have a lot of business, because there's a couple sellers I can think like that, and they've shipped CGCs to me, not in a box, just wrapped in cardboard and bubble wrap, and that's how you get cracked cases and stuff. So look at the feedback. If they have, if it's below 100, I would probably just move on, maybe a 99 point, something like that. But if there's a lot of sort of negative and neutral feedback, I would move on. And there's one seller that kind of comes to mind. Can't think of their name, but yeah, always check the feedback. So the third one here is CGC case condition. So you want to look for scuffs, scratches, Newton rings. Newton rings are less important for me. I don't really worry too much about them, to be honest. Those are kind of some of those oily markings that can happen from the slabbing process. More about the scuffing and the scratches. You really want to look on this sort of top part of the CGC label to make sure that's clean looking, and obviously on the case too. There's that inner well scuffing as well, which can show up on certainly really dark covers. But most of the time, books don't have too much of that. But yeah, that's some you want to look out for is the CGC case condition, because it is really important to have, if you want to kind of resell for top dollar kind of thing, to have a really nice looking case, and just avoids kind of having to get it re-slabbed or anything like that. So number 3 is the case conditioning. Number 4 is centering. And when I talk about centering, I'm talking about the centering of the book. So I think in a comment before it was oh, you're worried about the centering of the book inside the case. I'm no, talking about the like spine centering of the book, like is the cover centered right? You know, does it curl around the back cover, or does some of the back cover curl around to the front cover? Like that's more what I mean about centering. And are pages sticking out the sides kind of thing? Sometimes, you know, a book looks so perfect when there's no pages sticking out the side. It's perfectly centered along the spine. So this actual Incredible Hulk 340 here is a good example of where the front cover kind of curls around to the back cover a little bit. It's a CGC 9.8, but one I would say is not perfectly centered because you have the front cover sort of curling around to the back, and you can see sort of the line here of sort of the front cover on the back cover a little bit. Not too pronounced on this book, actually. It's pretty much perfectly centered, but you know, I've mentioned on Hulk 340 with the McFarlane signatures on the side, I've sort of noticed that when you can really see the signatures and they're not sort of curled around the book, that you get the 9.8s go for kind of top dollar. Whereas if the McFarlane signature is kind of curled around the book and you only see like half of it, I've noticed the price is maybe not as firm. So, you know, a detail kind of specific to Incredible Hulk 340, but just illustrates centering of a comic book. That's one thing you want to look after. I am really more prone to sort of pay up for one that has a really nice spine centering and one where there's no pages sticking out the side. Those are kind of the two things, you know, you really want to look out for. And another thing to say about centering is this one's a good example of it. I sort of prefer when the back cover comes around to the front cover a little bit, because then you see the full cover, and then, you know, maybe there's like the slightest little, in Hulk 340's case, there's a little black sort of line of the back cover. Sometimes it's a white, depending on what the color of the back cover is. But I don't mind that. I don't mind when you get a little bit of the back cover line, because then you see the full cover from the, you know, looking at the book from the front. And if you get that, that's, to me, would be like perfect centering, just a little bit of the back cover showing on the front and no pages sticking out the side. That would be an example of kind of a perfect centered book. These two are pretty much examples of a perfect centered book. They just got the little bit of the back cover showing, so you see the McFarlane signature is perfect. And no real pages sticking out the sides or anything, just really nice and flat white pagers. Yeah, really happy with it. These two are my kind of main ones. This one has the best coloring. So, yeah, number 4 was centering and kind of getting in depth there, but certainly I think we should. And number 5, though, is colors. Yeah, so colors, this one for me in the Incredible Hulk, my Incredible Hulk 340s has the best color, but it's the one with that centering that I mentioned where the cover kind of curls around to the back of the back cover a little bit. The front cover curls around to the back. But really nice colors on this one. Yeah, hopefully it kind of shows up, but that's definitely another thing to look for. Certain books, really important. I could have brought out my Amazing Spider-Man 300, where the background in the 9.8, sometimes they're really orange, and that's kind of a dimmer type of color. Whereas, you know, the prices get really high if you get a nice new Amazing Spider-Man Amazing Spider-Man 300 CGC 9.8 in a new case with those bright sort of red background colors that shows that there was a lot of ink in the printer or whatever it was, and the colors are really nice on those examples, because yeah, sometimes on 9.8s the colors are not perfect. Certainly there's 9.6s and 9.4s that have better colors than 9.8s, and that's something you want to keep in mind. There's 9.6s and 9.4s that have better centering than 9.8s, something you want to keep in mind for sure. The 6th one, so 5 was colors, yeah, 4 and 5, centering and colors, really ones that people sort of overlook because they just assume the book's perfect, but sometimes you get the book and then you notice everything and you're like, you can feel some remorse maybe, but you know, you just want to know what you're buying, and that's really what this is all about. Number 6 here is condition. So condition is, you know, are there some spine dinks? Are the corners perfect? Because yeah, 9.8s do allow for, you know, I'm pretty sure it's non-color spine dinks and non-color breaking spine dinks in the sort of actual official write-up of the grading system or whatever it is. But you still want to be aware of that because, yeah, certainly I have quite a few 9.8s that have little spine dinks, and they're really, you almost can't even notice them unless you kind of tilt it up to the light and you really start to look. But yeah, again, another way that 9.8s are not perfect, but, you know, they should sort of, you know, at first glance maybe look almost perfect, but, you know, when you get into those details, you might expect to see a spine dink, or, maybe a corner that was even creased slightly. I think some of these corners that looked creased or folded on 9.8s, I believe is maybe the graders have deemed it sort of a manufacturing defect, like, coming right off the printing press. Maybe they were known to just fold them right on, at that little bit because, that's how the machine worked or something like that. Because I do see, 9.8s. None of these are good examples. These got all pretty crisp and flat, all these Incredible Hulk 340s. But, sometimes you'll get little corner creases and things like that, sometimes even on the cover. But, so, yeah, number 6 is condition. Yes, bindings, corners, sort of what you would think of as the general things that you want to look for in comic books, sort of, besides the colors and the centering, too, which I really like to pay attention to pretty good. So that's number 6. And number 7 here on the 7-point checklist. I think once you do those 6, you get a really good idea of, what you're going to buy, the slight differences in the 9.8, so you know what you're buying. And then you do your pricing research, and you're going to know the fair value for your book, and you can make judgments based on all those differences that you've sort of looked at and sort of did that you looked at when you did the checklist. And then you can maybe go out and buy. Once you know that fair value for your book, that's kind of the last step, is just make sure you do your research and know the fair value so you don't overpay, because there's always people on eBay with those buy it nows that are, certainly 20, 30, 40, 50% higher than the fair market value for a book. So that's a lot of what I talk about being patient, is just, there's always going to be a book out there where someone's trying to get really expensive prices. Like, you don't want to be so naive to think that, that's the only, that's going to be the exact fair price, the only one on eBay at that price. Like, no, you got to look at the completed sales and know the fair market value, do a little research, and do those completed sales searches on eBay, and get to know the fair price of the book you want. Then you can go out and buy. And so the 7-point checklist, I'll have it in the list in the description below for some reference. But an example that kind of came to mind for me was, I mentioned on the last video here that I bought a Batman Beyond number 2, and I got really lucky and kind of grabbed one from within Canada when I was doing the research for the last video, the Batman Beyond video that we did. But there was a Batman Beyond number 2 on eBay for the last month here, let's call it, and I wanted to buy it, a CGC 9.8 it was in the US, but it was a decent shipping to Canada, decent price and everything. But I noticed a little spine dink on it. Yeah, there was a really good scan, so I like that too. I like to buy from sellers that have really good scans too. You just, more certainty, you know what you're going to get kind of thing. And it had really good scans, and I noticed there was a spine dink on it, and a 9.8 with pretty much a color-breaking spine dink. So, hey, that's the thing. Like, these CGC graders are not like perfect robots. They're human beings. They're going to make mistakes, so that's one thing you got to sort of accept in the grading comic game, I think. But I decided to lay off on it because, you know what? I just thought, hey, this one's still pretty underfollowed. I know there's not a lot of them, but I don't want like a 9.8 with a spine dink. And definitely got excited when I first saw that listing, but took a little time, looked a little bit closer, checked out the centering, the colors, the condition of it, the condition of the case. That's why I really like good scans too. You want to, be aware of those maybe pictures that are a little bit fuzzy, and if the person doesn't have good 100% feedback, then, I'd probably just move on because the picture's probably fuzzy for a reason, and they might be hiding, a scuff or a mark or whatever it might be. Be aware of that. The feedback usually doesn't lie. That's what I'm sort of finding out quite often is there are, again, a couple sellers on eBay, I think, that sell 9.8s regularly, but their feedback's really kind of bad. And there's like, in the last 12 months, let's say there's like, 20 or 30 people that have negative or neutral feedback. And you think like, how could that happen when they have so many cool 9.8s like on sale? And I think it's just the packaging. They get lazy with the packaging, and if they don't realize that all CGC books have to be in a box, then they're going to get some negative feedback because some cases will be cracked. Another thing that's one thing, and that was number 2 there, to check out the feedback in the checklist here, the 7-point checklist. So. Again, I'll have it in the description below, the 7-point checklist. But, this is, I think, an important topic to cover. We did a video, it was maybe 8 or 10 months ago now, like a really long time ago, about this topic. But yeah, one to definitely revisit, because a 9.8 comic book, yeah, is not perfect. It's not. And yeah, you gotta still be aware and do your due diligence when you're buying, and that's really important, because yeah, it's that one easy mistake to make is just, oh, 9.8s are all perfect. As soon as one pops up, you snap by it. It comes in the mail, and then there's like a couple scuffs on the case, and it's uncentered, and you expected it to just be perfect. So that's the scenario you want to avoid. You just want to kind of know what you're gonna get with the CGC 9.8s. Yeah, not all of them are perfect. Like, I would say maybe, yeah, 30 to 40% of mine just, they look awesome. They're perfect, they're flat, but the other 60% of them are, oh, there's a spine ding. Oh, like that corner little thing. Oh, that's not centered. And so, yeah, just things to be aware of, for sure. So, yeah, if you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. And, yeah, hit the bell for all the latest video notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter, too, as well. But yeah, really glad I could just kind of bring out all my Incredible Hulk 340s. Yep. It's the only CGC 9.8 I have 4 of, so that kind of, I've said in the past, that kind of in itself almost speaks to that. This is probably my favorite one of my favorite CGC 9.8s to buy. And yeah, it's I think even now with, I mentioned briefly there, that low CGC 9.8 ratio for a late 80s book. That is like the 13.8%. That is usually in really expensive early 80s books. But this is a 1988 book, and to have that really sort of early 80s super rarity, like I always thought Incredible Hulk 340 could be worth a lot more given that rarity, and that, yeah, the CGC 9.8 ratio for a late 80s book is really, compares really well. So yeah, yeah, so happy I could kind of get through some of these differences here, and yeah, subtle topic, but one to keep in mind when you're buying CGC 9.8 books to kind of have a better experience, I think. Alright, that'll be it for the video today. Message me on Instagram if you have any questions about whatever it might be. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.